All right, what's up, guys? In today's video, we will be discussing how I gained 25 pounds of muscle in 16 months. So, starting out lifting weights, I was a 140-pound long distance runner. I was about 140 pounds, 9.9% body fat. And in 16 months, I went 165-pound, 9% body fat, almost stage ready bodybuilder. And here's how I did it. All right, step one, I followed a 4-day per week bodybuilding split. Now, here's what's most important. It doesn't matter if you have no idea what you're doing. Step one is just get into the gym, okay? If you have no idea what you're doing, it doesn't matter. Just go to the gym and be consistent, okay? So literally what I did was I knew I wanted to get muscle. I wanted to be big like John Cena. I wanted to be big like The Rock. So I literally Googled a bodybuilding routine for beginners. I Googled that and I followed that routine and I went to the gym and I just followed that routine religiously, okay? I followed a 4-day per week bodybuilding split. Now, I really had no idea how to do any of the exercises, but that doesn't matter if you don't know how to do anything. You just go in there and you try your best, okay? You do that every single day. Now, what I would recommend doing is, and what I did was, when I would come across an exercise I didn't know how to do, like let's say I didn't know how to do like dumbbell shrugs, so I go on YouTube and I would say how to do dumbbell shrugs, and there would be a video showing you how to do dumbbell shrugs. So in terms of gaining muscle, the most effective way to do this is by following a bodybuilding routine. So I recommend you find some bodybuilding routine. It doesn't matter which one. It can be any single one, especially if you're a beginner. If you're a beginner, find a bodybuilding routine, follow it, and go to YouTube and watch videos on how to train muscles you don't know how to do. And eventually you'll start figuring stuff out on your own, okay? But make sure you target every single muscle. So in order to target every single muscle, or excuse me, in order to optimize the amount of muscle you grow in a short amount of time, you need to be training every muscle. So make sure you're hitting your lats, your traps, your hips, your quads, your glutes, all that good stuff. All right, step two, I found my maintenance calories, and your maintenance calories are just the amount of calories you have to eat to maintain your current body weight. Now, in order to you do that by going to Google and searching TDEE calculator. Once you go to TDEE calculator, it'll ask you a couple questions. You fill out the information, and it'll tell you what your maintenance calories are. Okay. Now, in order to gain weight, you have to eat above your maintenance calories. Now, if you eat in a caloric surplus of 500 calories per day, you'll gain a pound a week. If you eat in a caloric surplus, double that, 1,000 calories per week per day, you'll gain 2 pounds a week. For beginners, I recommend doing something like 250, anywhere from 250 to 500 calorie surplus, so you can gain muscle without gaining too much fat. If you gain 4 pounds, the most amount of muscle you can gain per month as a beginner on average, assuming you have average genetics, is about 2 pounds of muscle. So if you eat in a 500 calorie surplus, you can get about 4 pounds per month, and half of that will be muscle and half of that will be fat. But if you're skinny, it really won't matter. You just need to put on weight, okay? So I recommend anywhere from a 250 to 1,000 caloric surplus daily. Um, in terms of what foods you should be eating, what I did was I made sure I ate 1.25 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So protein is very important. Protein is the macronutrient you need in order to grow. Okay, if you don't eat enough protein, you won't grow. You can't just eat chocolate chip cake or bread and grow. You need to eat lots and lots of protein. I recommend 1.25 grams of protein per pound of body weight. You can get this from chicken, fish. I recommend canned tuna, chicken breast, tilapia, pink salmon, beef liver, not ground turkey that you cook in a skillet, ground beef that you cook in a skillet. Greek yogurt is a great option. Scrambled eggs are a great option. Egg whites are a great option. Beef jerky is a great option. There's so many opportunities. There's so many things you can do. So many foods you can eat in order to hit your protein goal. So yes, you have to eat protein in order to build muscle. I recommend eating a minimum of 1 pound of 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, but I did 1.25. You really won't go wrong with eating too much protein. I'd recommend eating a minimum though of 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight in order to grow. If you eat in a caloric surplus but you don't eat enough protein, you might get a little stronger for a while since you're a beginner making beginner gains. However, eventually you'll come to a point where you don't progress anymore, and that's because you're not eating enough protein. All right. Step three, and this one's extremely important, and this is what I attribute to getting 25 pounds of muscle in 16 months, which is pretty accelerated. I learned how to properly contract every muscle. So when you start lifting, I want you all to go on YouTube. I have videos on this. If you want to watch my videos, I'll put a video on this topic in the description below. I'll link to it. You want to learn about mind-muscle connection. Now, mind-muscle connection is your mind's ability to isolate, contract, or feel the muscle you're training whenever you're training a specific muscle. So, for the most part, whenever you're doing exercises, you're using more than one muscle. Okay, even though the purpose of an exercise is to primarily grow one muscle, you're technically just trying to train and grow one muscle. Okay, so for example, when you're doing V grip tricep pull downs or bicep curls, when you're doing bicep curls, you're using lats and your biceps. When you're doing V grip pull downs, you're using your triceps, shoulders, and lats for stability. But when you're training V grip pull downs, you want to get bigger triceps, and so pretty much you want to be able to use your mind and just almost entirely isolate the tricep when you're training the movement. You'll never 100% isolate any muscle when you're training it, but you can get it very high, like 98, 99% almost. But like there's gonna be a little when you're doing an exercise, you're gonna have a little bit of engagement from other muscle groups. But the point is to be able to isolate it almost perfectly to where you're effectively only training that muscle group. Okay, so learn about mind muscle connection, especially when it comes to your muscles like your lats, your big muscle in your back. A lot of people, especially beginners, they don't know how to properly contract their lats. A, because no one tells them how. B, because when they train it, they're assuming they're training it correctly. And C, because you can't see it when you train it. So if you can't see it, it's hard to know if you're doing it correctly. So I highly recommend that all beginners learn how to properly contract their lats in addition to every other muscle. Eventually, after that, about 6 months in, or about 10 months in, I graduated to about training every muscle group about 2 times per week. So my first routine split, like I said earlier, you want to target every single muscle at least once a week, but eventually you want to graduate to training every muscle 2 times a week. There's lots of literature supporting this, but training every muscle group twice a week results in substantially more growth, especially in the beginner phase. So after about 6 to 10 months of consistent training, you're getting strength, you're putting on muscle. I recommend training every muscle twice a week. Routines I recommend for this, I recommend push pull legs, heavy push pull legs, high volume. Okay, so your push exercises would be any chest, shoulder, or tricep exercises. Pull exercises would be any back or lats or trap exercises and forearms. And your leg exercises are leg exercises. So what I would do is, what I recommend doing for beginners, you push pull leg heavy. So this is when you focus on gaining strength. When I'm training for strength, I'm training anywhere from the 3 to 8 rep range. And then the next 3 days, I recommend doing high volume, where I'm doing 8 to 12 reps, focusing on hypertrophy, focusing on building muscle, getting a good pump, getting blood to the muscle. I also highly recommend doing drop sets. Drop sets are when you do an exercise and you do the same exercise again, but you drop the weight by a certain percentage. This helps you grow muscles more quickly. So I highly recommend that. And in addition to this, I ran 4 miles every day, and I did this because A, I love running, and B, it helped me stay lean. So, like I said, in the beginning stages, when you're putting on muscle, I recommend a surplus between about 500, 250 to 500. But when you are bulking, especially as a beginner, you are going to put on some fat. And so I recommend doing some form of cardio as a way to mitigate the amount of fat you're putting on. Um, so yeah, I was running 4 miles a day to stay lean, still eating a surplus to build muscle. So you don't have to run, but make sure you're doing some form of cardio in order to stay lean to avoid getting fat. Because the last thing you want to do is be like really fat. Because you're gonna have to cut weight eventually if you want to get like shredded like I was, and cutting sucks. Like people can diet. Dieting is no problem, but ultimately it's no fun. And when you cut, you want to not have to cut that much fat, so your cut doesn't have to last that long. Okay, so make sure you're doing some cardio always when on a bulk to avoid getting too fat. And that is how I gained 25 pounds of muscle in 16 weeks. I'll leave a link in the description below for the mind muscle connection video that we discussed here in step 3. And if anyone's interested, I offer one-on-one coaching, how to become a hybrid athlete, how to build muscle and run long distances concurrently, how to get good at running, how to build nice physique, how to diet, all that good stuff. I'll leave a link below in the bio. And if you guys like this video, leave a like, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.